Everybody, Brian Good here. I got a lot to cover, so I'm going to get right to it. First off, yes, the fog has been wild here this morning. It's still close to zero visibility as of this taping. If you look at the visible satellite from GOES 16, it's really cool. The fog is the more uniform light gray area that kind of pops into frame at the last minute. But we also have some clouds that are passing overhead. Small little cumulus clouds are kind of drifting in from the west. So these, you got the fog bank and you got the clouds above that kind of just sliding over on top. So a very interesting setup. So once the fog begins to erode away and disperse, you will see these clouds then overhead that will be revealed. And the disbursement of the fog is going to take a bit, but it's we'll get there. All right, we'll improve things out as we head to later this morning. But right now it's quite soupy out. We're not alone either. A lot of the eastern Kentucky, Ohio area, a lot of moisture on the ground from the remnants of Irma has left behind this moisture lake in the ground where these calm winds have developed, and there you go, you got fog. But overall, pattern nice and quiet here locally. It's now time for the West Coast to really kick up the notch. They can use some rain for these wildfires. They don't want the lightning, but they're going to get some rain at times and some, snow falling in the higher elevations. But here's what's interesting about the pattern ahead. What are we going to do about the tropics and the high pressures and so forth across our neck of the woods? Because here is Jose, and this is looking ahead, by the way, all the way up to the 19th of the month. So this is looking ahead to next Tuesday. This is either going to be Lee or Maria. Could be both, because that could actually end up being Lee. We'll see. But one of them entering the Caribbean. But look how close Jose is on the GFS. I mean, pretty much brushing the coast. Even if it doesn't make a landfall, it's certainly kicking up the seas already, rip currents, and then outer bands could even affect the land areas itself in New England. What's going to happen, though, is that high pressure is going to build in, and a delayed enough time that's going to allow Jose to get out of the way and be on with itself and become extratropical. Meanwhile, Lee Maria, whichever one this is, decides to enter the game and is heading toward Puerto Rico, according to the GFS. And this will be coming up on a week from today. But at the same time, that high pressure that helped steer Jose is now in its place. So whatever comes out of the Caribbean isn't going to head north, at least not initially, because it's not going to like that high being there. So it's going to try to find a way around the high. And to do that, it has to go northwest. And we see where that takes us. And this will be the 25th. It's a long way off. It's one model's idea. But what I want you to understand is it's all about the timing of these highs coming in, these troughs across the plains, and how fast these tropical systems move. Everything has to be in sync at a certain time, and if one of them is off, it affects the other one. And the same story happens with each model run, and you're going to get wild-looking model changes on a long-term forecast because of that. So I wouldn't get too worked up on that. Let's look at the Euro. Euro, similar idea with Jose, with it brushing the outer banks of North Carolina. It does see Lee and Maria, one of them doing something out here into the Caribbean, Central Atlantic, as we end this weekend. It brings the high into, sort of delayed, but enough that it tries to push it, but look what happens. It builds on top of it, and it forces Jose to go back inland to Delmarva Peninsula in weekends, but it does push it back to the United States. It's been hinted at that the past couple of days. And it really will depend on where that how it arranges itself and its timing. If it can push Jose out, great. If it ends up crowding Jose and pushes him back, then that's a whole other story. But then we got to keep an eye on what's happening here in the Caribbean. What is that going to do? And that one, right now, the Euro just takes a step to the northwest and doesn't know what to do from there. So the both of them have the same players on the field, if you will. They just are a little different on timing. That's why you're getting different results. So that'll be our main focus next week. We've got to figure out is that mess. In the meantime, while we're trying to figure that out, we really are going to be in a summer pattern for us starting this weekend into next week. There is going to be a front that will try to get toward our area Monday, Tuesday, maybe a few thunderstorms as it tries to do that. Can't rule it out. Same thing around the 22nd, 23rd. But really, I don't see anything that could really punch into the area until maybe the 25th. And that would knock us down to normal. And that's still iffy if that can happen. So a lot of 80s ahead for us. So let's talk about the announcement that was made yesterday. And I wanted to talk about yesterday, but I shouldn't have time. And that is the La Nina watch has been issued for the upcoming winter. And the models show that we go into negative territory. Here is your neutral line, 0. Oh, let me change my wand so you can see what I'm drawing. Sorry about that. All right, so here's your neutral line. When you go above 0.5 for a period of time, that is El Nino. When you go negative 0.5 for 5 consecutive months, I believe it is now, then you're entering La Nina status. And you see the forecast, here we are in September. The forecast is for us to go into La Nina territory as we head into this upcoming winter. In fact, when you look at the probabilities on the models that they're using, the higher percentages for this upcoming winter fall in right here. 60% for La Nina And then the next possibility would be neutral, then certainly not a risk here for El Nino to happen, the opposite effect. So what does this all mean? Well, hopefully I had an image. There it is. It's the cooling of the ocean waters in the east central areas of the Pacific Ocean. Here's Mexico right here, and here's South America. When they're all lit up in oranges and reds, you got El Nino. When they got the blues, it's La Nina, the opposite effect. What that can have on the United States, it varies because of other factors, but in general, you end up with warmer water out here, which creates a high pressure that allows then, because of its placement, for the cold air shots to come in across the northern Rockies and the plains. Meanwhile, you got your subtropical jet that tries to kick in, and you get some active weather in our neck of the woods. I mean, all kinds of crazy storm systems. Yes, it most of the time favors warm for our area, not so much warm and rainy, but it will add in warmth. Now, warmth, what does that mean in relative terms? Well, if it's in the middle of January and it's an Arctic blast right now, and we got warm air coming that gets us to 33 degrees, 34 even, then yeah, we could be talking about a winter storm even, though we get the warm. But still, the warm is still cold enough for a winter event. So it's kind of misleading. You think warm, you're thinking like 80s. It's not going to be like that. It just means it's going to be a complicated setup with the combination of cold air and warm air in our neck of the woods, if this does indeed develop. I'm going to go into a lot more detail about this, of course, with the winter forecast. I got more stuff to look at, but this is an early snapshot. And it seems like the Japanese model, the JAMSTEC model, just came out yesterday. It seems to be leaning toward that idea 2 months in a row now. It's showing a colder pattern across where that cold air shot does come into play in the northern plains, and then we get the result of the jet kicking in here across portions of the southeast corner of the country, your storm system. So it's aiming for a warmer setup for us, but really, if you look at it close enough, it's kind of like a battle zone that we're in, and for all intents and purposes. When you look at the moisture levels, it's showing a lot of moisture in the air. So it's, again, a stormy setup is what it indicates for the winter period. And when you look at the ocean temperatures, the past few years we've seen El Nino set up here, very warm waters in the Gulf of Alaska, the west coast of the United States, and cooler waters, especially here to the east. But that is what led to our crazy wild winters. But we're seeing for the first time in a few years, cooler than average along the Pacific coast, and warmer in the Atlantic, which would allow for areas of low pressure. A pretty good subtropical jet would be angled pretty much, let me erase this, the subtropical jet would be angled very sharply like this, which is a good setup, to be honest with you guys. If this holds true and you get cold air coming in, I mean, this is like nor'easter, central, app runner type deal for the winter. Pretty wild stuff, if this Japanese model and even some of the climate models are right. Let's not get ahead of myself here. I won't get too excited. But look at the ocean waters now. This is what is forecast from the Japanese model for September for the upcoming winter. Now let me show you what they had. If I can get in. Hold on. My computer's thinking. Here we go. This is what it was for last year. It had the warmer waters off the coast. Similar off the eastern seaboard. We had warm and warm. Not much really happened for us, did it? And then in the crazy winter we had in 13 into 14, it did have cooler across the west, but it also did have cooler over the east, which really allowed for the troughs, in my opinion, to really dig deep to the south, and you didn't have a really strong subtropical jet, but you had cold and dry, which is really what we ended up with, a very cold polar vortex kind of deal. So the setup that we have this winter showing up in the JAMSTEC model is one that I like. I like it. This is a good sign, guys. I'll stop for now. We'll talk more coming up on Halloween.